My name's Chris McKinney, and I've worked with lorrying and staffing companies for the last 10 years. So you can probably guess by my accent, I'm British. So I moved over here about 4 years ago. And my background for the last 4 years has been recruiting Salesforce. So some of the biggest customers I've helped recruit for are companies like Twitter, Yelp, got the marketing cloud team there, some pharmaceutical companies like Genentech, some big telecoms like T-Mobile, and then a whole range of small, medium-sized companies in between. And whilst we get this stuff, so just to give you some basic tips and stuff that people don't know. So first of all, when you submit your resume to a client or a company directly, it's very different to submitting through an agency and a recruiter. And the main difference being, when it comes through to an agency often wants to put their own branding onto your resume. And what they normally do is create a cover sheet that sits on top of the resume, which is almost like an application letter. And during that application letter, what it normally does is highlights your experience. And that could be anything from total years of experience in the IT world, any certifications, any notable projects, anything related to the job specification. Obviously, the agencies will try to tailor that cover sheet as much as possible to highlight your skills to the job. What it does mean for you, and I think somebody asked this question earlier, is if you have a very pretty resume from Canvas with lots of boxes and formatting, it might not fit in the Word document or the agency's branded format and template. And you spend a lot of time with lovely boxes of text disappearing and 3 columns trying to work out where text went. The other thing is, depending on the company, sometimes we're submitting a resume straight to a hiring manager via email, via Outlook, straightforward. Sometimes, I think, as Shellen said, it's going through a system. A lot of these systems don't allow for fancy text, whether it's HTML or moving or dynamic text or images or even embedded links. Which can be really frustrating. So if you've put your trailhead link in there, sometimes it'll flag it. So I would recommend having a nice, pretty Canva resume for directly work with an agency. Maybe the first time you talk to them, great for conferences, going around and meeting people, but also having almost like a plainer text, simple Word document resume. Might seem a little bit boring compared to the other one, but it does make our life a lot easier. Okay? All right. Akemi, were you able to?
Yes, hold on. I'm going to share my screen then.
Perfect. Okay, so, just to kind of link back to what I was just saying there, this is a beautiful resume. It looks really, really clean. It looks like Salesforce made it themselves. The color scheme's perfect. Where you might struggle here is if you submitted it through an agency system, that box on the left, where you've almost got 2 different sized boxes of text, that formatting might not translate. So this is absolutely great, but I'd almost have a boring simple Word doc version where it's just 1 column, not in text boxes, and exactly like you've done there, with a personal profile at the top, then going to the experience, then into maybe your skills and your contact details, and they would layer their cover sheet over the top. So the first thing sounds really, really simple, but having your name and the job you're applying for at the top is so basic that people forget to do it. So that was a good. I'd also suggest, if you're not using a box like this where your contact information is there, always put it at the top. And the reason being is agencies get lots and lots of resumes, and hiring managers do, and particularly if it's somebody else coordinating, it might not be the same person calling you up to schedule that interview, so they need the information quickly. I'd also put in there your trailhead link if you have it. So the first thing managers typically look for in agencies is we look at your resume, we look at your LinkedIn, and we look at your trailhead side by side. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that they line up, so some consistency. But if you think about them, your resume is in-depth detail about your projects and your experience. Your LinkedIn gives a kind of public snapshot into who you are and a high-level summary. And then your trailhead is your real Salesforce specific. So we might look for specific badges you've completed, might look for certifications, and what have you. So I would also make sure that's listed. And then I like that you've kept a really short and simple profile at the top. Also remember, a lot of hiring managers, agents, a lot of people in general these days, where are they reading this document? Not everybody has it up on a laptop. Sometimes people are reading it on the train. So just remember, big block text. If you write a whole paragraph, if it fills a whole phone screen, it might not get read. I would actually say the tip I would give you here is whatever you put here, make sure it personalizes you. So this is great. You're a Salesforce administrator with hands-on experience using the Salesforce platform. Everything you've wrote here is great, but it doesn't tell me anything about you, Akemi, or anything. How would I remember this is your resume versus the one I just saw? So you kind of did it a little bit at the end. You're passionate about continuous learning. This is a good chance if you have any notable projects or passionate for a certain industry. If there's something you really like doing, like you're a great team leader, or there's a specific area of Salesforce you're really interested in, certain cloud, certain product. You'll see a lot of people starting to market themselves as marketing cloud experts, CPQ experts. This is a good time to set yourself and differentiate yourself from the one before. Is anyone else, actually I'll just throw it out to the people on here, is anyone else marketing themselves specifically around a specific skill set or trying to put themselves down a certain avenue?
Nope. Yeah, I'll just answer that. I worked in Service Cloud as a trainer and knowledge administrator, so I'm trying to market myself now more as business analyst and specifically in Service Cloud, just because I have a lot of experience with
absolutely.
As well as in the system. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's very. That would make you stand out, wouldn't it? It's to say Shannon's got an interesting background before working in Salesforce. She was a sales manager and a user of Salesforce, and then became a subject matter expert. So something like that, if you can do, absolutely, that's what I would put in there. Drawing on my experience as a user and as a, somebody who's got practical experience using the system, I've now started to develop my skills and my technical knowledge into a point where I can problem solve, and people will relate to that. So the next thing is going into your experience. So you've got experience, skills, certification. So let's take the left-hand side first. Okay. So on the skills side, I like straight away you've named the clouds that you've used, which is really good. Okay, so if I'm a manager, it relates directly to what I've done. The one thing it doesn't tell me which is the one thing I probably want to see is, okay, so what have you done with these clouds? Okay, and now, so I'm going to tell everybody this. There's a really, really, there's a fine line here, because a lot of people the danger is you talk about all the really basic stuff that you do in Salesforce. So if you say, literally list everything you've done from add account to maintain, problem solve, meet a user, you can go on and on and on. But what I mean is, how do you make your experience relatable to somebody reading your resume who's looking at, visualizing their Salesforce roadmap and visualizing their work, that thinks, oh, okay, you could do this. I'll give you examples. So if you're a hiring manager and you're looking at bringing on an administrator, there are probably some certain clouds and certain problems you're trying to solve. Some certain, whether it's you're trying to integrate some systems, you're trying to implement a new product, whether you're trying to migrate some data from one to the other, whether it's dealing with a backlog of tickets. But the more you can talk about the why you did the work, the purpose of the work, then talk about how you executed that work and what the outcome was, the more the manager can relate and compare it to theirs. Does that make sense? So, and I know this is quite hard when you obviously new to getting on the Salesforce ladder, you're probably thinking, okay, this is easy. If you've got 20 years of projects experience, you can just pick them up. But for example, let's take Sales Cloud there. What was one thing you've been taught how to do with Sales Cloud?
For the Sales Cloud?
Well, any of them. You can pick any of them.
Lead.
What was one common activity?
Lead, from lead you convert into contact, account, and opportunity.
Perfect, right? And why would a company need to do that? What scenarios, what kind of situations would they need somebody like yourself to come in and do that?
And they want to make more sales, so.
That's right. So this is what I mean by painting the picture for the manager is, so you've been taught how to convert leads into opportunities to create more business opportunities for the sales team to convert into revenue and sales. And obviously the more they grow their sales department, the more they need the sales team set up to do this. It needs to be, the sales team need their account set up. They also need to be trained on how to track and do this properly. But the outcome for the business is of course, more revenue and more sales. So if you've done this before as a type of project and you can explain the why behind it. So, and this kind of ties in here to when you put in the bullet points here. Absolutely create custom objects and fields, but if you can then tie that back into why you were asked to do that or why you would be asked to do that and what the outcome is for the business, and it could be as simple as improve the efficiency of the Salesforce team, optimize the data being recorded, or even how to migrate away from Excel spreadsheets and actually store data within Salesforce. It makes it a lot easier for the hiring managers to see, okay, you really do know how to do this, and you get the purpose of the work.
If I don't really have the job experience as a Salesforce administrator in the past, how should I describe? I've done that in the dev org or on the playground, but not for the actual job. Is it okay to list it?
Yeah, but you can. I think the most important thing is you understand why it would be used in a business setting. So yeah, you've done that skill in, maybe a sandbox environment. So you've been taught in training, but you do understand why it would be used. And what you're saying to this person is, if I come into your company, I've been taught how to do these things. I also know when to do them. So you could put here, create custom objects and fields, and you could talk about and for the purpose of X, Y, Z. So it's just showing the manager you haven't just learned this skill in a classroom without context. You know, when would you create custom objects and fields? And even when's the difference in using some of these things? So, you know, whether you're talking about different validation rules or permission settings, creating different permission sets based on, and talking about where, almost giving a hint as to when you would use a different permission set, so somebody can clearly see.
Yeah,
is anyone else? Oh, so go ahead.
I wasn't really sure how detailed I should explain under the skill section versus like under the experience section. Like I list some like more detailed explanation there.
This is absolutely fine, and I think this is what you've done here is great. Under here is you either want to relate it to what you've done in the past or demonstrating you've got that knowledge of, okay, this is how I'd apply these skills in your workplace. I'm assuming there's a lot of people on the call who may be also just starting off on their Salesforce career. So if you've got any other projects you've done, whether it's like course assignments or class projects, you could put that in there. And some people put their Salesforce certification number or their kind of trailhead number just so people can find them easily on Trailhead. But otherwise, I think it's a really clear-cut resume. I just say to everybody, how do you make yourself stand out from the other Salesforce administrator resume they just looked at? So the easiest way is, you know, everybody could maybe say, create custom objects and fields on their resume because it's quite a common skill to learn. But the more you can put in anything around your experience or the context will definitely make you stand out a little bit more. Yeah, like I definitely recommend to having, if you opt for one which is super fancy with all the colors in the formatting, having one as a simple text format like this is really good just for submissions. It generally, the big thing that gets messed up are the boxes, the text boxes, are typically what throws it off. But I think this is pretty simple and straightforward. I like at the top, so you've got all the links. I would add, just bear in mind your phone number.
Right.
If you're job seeking, particularly, you never know how somebody's going to get hold of your resume and where it gets passed from one person to the other, which isn't scare you. I just meant a coordinator might want to get hold of you quickly or need to call you with a question. And otherwise, so I like the introduction. Obviously, you talk about your experience with the Salesforce platform. The one thing I would say here is, with your summary, think about the job you want to get, what you're marketing yourself is, and don't let anything distract from that. So you said earlier you're interested in being a business system analyst. Is that correct? Or a Salesforce BA? Right.
I do some of that in my role now, but I'd like to get more into that, do that more than training, because right now I'm more training and knowledge administration heavy. So I want to flip that.
So the first thing that stands out to me is you talk about in that second paragraph, working in documentation, training, analysis, design, development. I strive to be an advocate for the customer, listening to their needs, right? Which screams out a lot of business system analysis, which I think is great. That's marketing you how you want to be. I'd almost go that step further. And even, you know, if that's the job title you want to market yourself as, put it as a title under your name on your resume. Make it clear to the person reading it, this is what I do. And especially if you're trying to make a transition from one area to another. And what I mean by that is, if I look down, the word that jumps out is training developer.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find is, so a good agency and a good hiring manager will read between the lines and talk to you and probably ask you, what do you do? But people might take it on face value and go, all right, I see the word training, I see the word developer, I'm looking for business system analyst. I can't see it. And it just, you almost have to spell it out for people sometimes. So putting it at the top under your name is really, really helpful. And then where you've put tools used include, I understand why you're doing this to showcase all these, your portfolio, your repertoire of all these different IT tools you have. But it kind of also distracts from what you want to do, because the paragraph above screams out great documentation, great at analysis, great at listening to customer problems, great at solutioning. The tools used implies more, to me, development. I see them and think, oh, you're listing these because maybe you develop with them, or maybe you have a strong technical background in HTML and CSS. So I actually think it maybe distracts a little bit from what you're doing. Instead, maybe you could talk about key business analysis skills. Maybe you want to list documenting user stories, or process mapping, or maybe some specific tools around business system analysis that emphasize your point. But I would actually say that bit, it almost raises more of a question mark than adds to what you did before. And the paragraph before is spot on.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And I love that you put hands-on experience in the Salesforce platform as a Salesforce knowledge administrator. I love that you go straight into the Salesforce certifications, which are really good, and the badges. A lot of hiring managers actually are starting to value badges as much, if not higher, than certifications. Of course, absolutely get your certification. But the reason being is, as more and more people get certifications, more and more badges are being released, which are very specific to certain Salesforce products or certain Salesforce tools. So, for example, if you work in financial services, and some of the badges around that are going to be a lot more appealing to a manager and jump out. But I think you've done a really good job of, summarizing both. And then your other certificates in education is absolutely fine. So I think where you've done that looks like, okay, I'm first and foremost Salesforce, but this is the other experience I bring to the table. Which is good. So the next thing is, I would think about how you want to market yourself, and job titles you have to take with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Mm-hmm. If anybody saw Elon Musk, what did he call himself? Techno King of Tesla recently. And he was trying to prove a point to say, what is the CEO these days? Job titles are deceiving. The big thing you need to think about is the person reading the resume, are they going to be clear about what you do? And are they going to view you and consider you for a business system analyst role? So sometimes it's almost making it really, really clear. So, for example, operations analyst and training developer, it might sound really, really obvious to you, but if it doesn't say the word Salesforce, and I have somebody that says Salesforce analyst, you're going to look like a non-Salesforce candidate. It sounds really, really dumb. And if you look at the line below, you can see the word Salesforce. But for somebody scanning resumes, and if they get 100 applicants, I would just make sure it's in there, even if you put it in brackets or parentheses after operations analyst and trained developer, Salesforce. Okay. And then also, again, think about the job you're applying for, right? So the first thing I would really do here is, I would highlight the fact that you've done Salesforce analysis, where you put lead analyst in classic lightning knowledge implementation, gathering user requirements, process mapping, writing user stories. That whole line from lead analyst all the way through developing end user training, I'd have put that almost instead of where you put the tools used include. Mm-hmm. Because that tells me you've done everything it takes to be a Salesforce business system analyst. And I would actually make that standalone bullet point, as your second bullet point, just sort of really, you almost want to make it crystal clear in how. And then just as you go through, so this is great, everything you put in here. Again, just think about the job you're applying for. So the last bullet point, administrator for Moodle and D2L, which are learning systems, I believe.
Right.
Which is great, but it almost, you've talked about being an analyst and all this great stuff you enjoy doing around gathering user requirements. It almost distracts again by talking about administration of a non-Salesforce system and almost something starting to sound a little bit more technical again. And actually leave it out there. Or you could put it down as additional experience. But for a Salesforce manager looking for Salesforce business system analysis, I try to keep it Salesforce if you can do. Unless you're applying for an education company or university, by which that might be incredibly useful. Kind of goes back to what Shellen was saying of just tweaking it. And so the other thing I would put in here, which is, this is a big thing a lot of people miss, is, okay, so you worked at Savos, which was formerly Pearson. I can see you're the lead analyst, did all this great work, but I'm not sure why you did it. I'm not sure what the purpose of the project. I'm sure there are multiple projects over that time period. And you don't need to list everyone, but the way you'll really show a manager that you understand user requirements is by showing them, what did you gather? What was the project? Who were, writing user stories? Who were the users? It was the classic to lightning, obviously, knowledge implementation, but what were the other parts that went into that? And how you can do this is really, really simple, is even just adding one more bullet point after it, just saying, played a key role in the X project. The users I worked with were salespeople, or in this case, it might be education course content, salespeople. My stakeholders were the director of education or the director of products, sales products, or whatever it was, and just give them some of the specifics. And it was a 12-month rollout to Salesforce and CPQ. So great. Actually, I'm going to actually ask you, what were you doing there? You don't have to give away all your company secrets, but give us an example of one piece of work where you had to do the user requirement gathering.
Well, that was when we were switching from, I'll even back up. When we did the initial rollouts, we had several different knowledge bases across the company in different systems that weren't Salesforce. So we had to gather user requirements from all different business units. So from sales, from different product business units, from support. And so we had to gather all the requirements for what would the knowledge base look like for if we're all going to join together and we're all going to use Salesforce. And also from the customer's perspective, because it's different types of customers.
Customers.
So, yeah.
Big piece of work. How many business units were involved?
it was a while ago. We started out with maybe 3 or 4, and then did that initially, and initially started in Service Cloud, and then we rolled, and that was in the K-12 division, and then we rolled it out to the higher ed division of the company. The company supplied training and textbooks and digital education solutions to K-12, so K-12 all the way through higher ed. So
as you're doing this, everybody's following this journey. So as you're saying this, everyone's going, all right, cool, this is a big piece of work. 3 to 4 business units. You start with this piece, then you went into the K-12. They're following you as you did it, and it's just adding those specifics. Now quantified this project. Suddenly everyone's like, wow, this is a big piece of work you're involved in. So just doing that, and an easy way for you to do it is tell the story to somebody or write down the story on a piece of paper.
Okay.
And try to, if you can quantify with numbers, so how many users were you supporting? How many people did you roll out to? What was the budget of the project? How many months did it take to deliver the work? Then, what was the outcome? What was the user feedback? Was there any, sometimes being honest in Salesforce, saying, actually, the first time we did it wasn't great, so we had to redo it. This is where we had to go back to the drawing board. Who are the typical stakeholders you're reporting to? So as a business system analyst, big difference working with a really technical team or technical users versus reporting to directors and VPs, and how you conduct those meetings and the language. Did you use any tools or systems to map your processes or write your user stories?
We do have we have Smartsheet for project planning and Lucid Chart for the process mapping.
Put it in there. Just convince if I was pretending to be a business system analyst, I wouldn't have a clue how to document all these things. You just put it in there, it just straight away, you've quantified it. Yeah, great tip. Actually, great tip, Anita. Is the more you can the more you can quantify with numbers, facts, or specific details that a manager can go, I can compare this to my project. You were working with 4 business units. I'm working with 3 business units here. You had 500 users. Our user base is around 600. You were tracking in Lucid. We used Asana or whatever, however they're doing it. This person's convinced you can do it. The other thing is it gives you really, really easy talking points in an interview. So the worst thing in the world is you're in an interview and you get some stock questions, some curveballs, some weird interview questions that have nothing to do with the actual interview or the job you're going to be doing. The interview should be really about your project and the experience and how you can help add value to this new project. What's your train of thought? What's your thinking? So the more you plant these things in there, if I'm a manager, rather than ask you some stock questions around experience, the first thing I'd ask you is, okay, cool. That's an awesome piece of work. Talk to me, how did you do that? Talk to me, how did you conduct that process mapping? How did you write the user stories? You said here you used Lisa. Can you just walk me through your process, what worked well, what didn't? But you're steering the interviewer to exactly the areas you know really well. You're steering them the way you want them to your experience and an area you feel really comfortable about talking. And the more you can do that, and I would really encourage you, I think it's great. What you've put here is really good. The more you can give them a few specifics, it'll just convince them you know your stuff. And more importantly, you know the why you were doing this piece of work, which really means you understand Salesforce, you understand the impact the platform has on other systems, on the other IT environment, the users. And if they bring you into their business, you're going to understand the concept of why they're trying to do that work.
Yeah, sounds good. I really love especially this whole storytelling from start to finish of a project. So definitely write that down and start practicing that in all the different scenarios. Thank you so much.
It's great. Yeah, I think this is really good. They've all been great so far. It's just tough act to follow. So he's up next. Any questions so far, by the way? Does this help?
This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay. The biggest advice I would give you is if you can get that interviewer, regardless of your level of experience, asking you about your work on your Salesforce project and how you did it, you're in your comfort zone. So, and actually I would rehearse it before you go in, because typically the questions they're going to ask you, if it's an administrator, they're going to talk about the size of the user base, what products you are maintaining, probably how many tickets, the volume, the typical bugs and issues. So it's the same. If you're hiring for an administrator, that's what you're going to ask, aren't you? How are you going to deal with these everyday problems that come up in the world of Salesforce? If it's a developer, they're going to be talking about, okay, was it customization? Was it configuration? Were you redoing work, or were you doing something for the first time? Were you trying to integrate products? What were you trying to do, and why were you doing it? And actually, what was the feedback after you did do it? So you can kind of anticipate this coming up and write yourself a script. And the business system analyst is a great one, because typically you can kind of have some fun here. You talk about the user requirements and problems. Typically you're being brought in to save the day. Nothing ever goes as smoothly as we like in Salesforce, where everything comes out the box and everybody's happy with it. So somebody's made a complaint about something somewhere not working somehow. And if you can talk about that, here's the problem. Here are the options we looked at. We looked at going to a third-party product. We decided to build it in-house. This were the challenges I got. This was the pushback we got on budget. You're taking them on that journey. And the manager sat there going, oh my God, yeah, this is happening to me too. There you go. And it's a really, really nice conversation. The final thing I would do, again, just whatever position you're applying for, put it right at the top. I put it right here. If you're looking for an administrator role, plaster that on there. And then straight away your Salesforce certification. So again, if you want to, I would actually, if you want, name some of the badges you've done that you think are specific. So if you want to go for an administrator, what are some of the badges? You could also talk about, if you're in progress of about to do a certification, so I've seen people put on their PDT pending exam, because I know a lot of people are in the process and they are working remotely, or they're in work and they haven't quite had the time to do certification, but they can show that they are working towards something and they're trying to achieve it. Now, obviously, you don't want to mislead the person and say you're doing something that you're not, but you can talk about the different badges or maybe certifications you're in the process of doing. And then, I like go straight into the talent stack and the project. So this is really good. 26% of fields can be tested. Okay, really good. Workshops. This is really good. So the thing missing at the top here is just knowing a bit more about you, Brian. So, what are your passions, what are your background? So I can see straight away here, you got a lot of experience in terms of problem solving. If I look at what you were doing as a web developer, looks like very customer facing, very bespoke work. And here, you've got a lot of experience working with people. So I guess if you look at yourself as a Salesforce administrator, let's assume you sat there outside the interview room and there are two other certified Salesforce administrators next to you. What are some of the other things you bring to the table? Let's assume everybody has a good good platform knowledge. But what are the things that get you excited? What do you love about Salesforce? And what have you done in your previous work that maybe would really add value to a customer, particularly where you'd be coming in as probably the subject matter expert and being very, very user-facing?
Oh, I should answer that question?
Yeah, sorry, I'm asking
Not
you.
theoretical. Okay,
yeah.
So I have a lot of customer-facing experience getting business requirements and clarifying those and breaking that down into figuring out technical solutions, dealing with customer support afterward and bugs and so on. So I guess that applies to both internal and consulting type positions, doing those discovery 100%. Meetings and
So think about the worst system administrator, the worst tech support you've ever had. I'm sure everybody's worked in a
Can't
company.
Talk to people. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody's had it, right? Call IT, super unhelpful. They're not friendly. They don't actually solve the problem. Think about if you're hiring for a Salesforce certified administrator, you've just invested all this money in Salesforce. You're trying to persuade everybody to not only track all their information and their details in Salesforce, you're trying to persuade Salesforce is a good thing, and you're trying to win people over. And this is what I think a lot of people forget is you're a huge advocate of Salesforce. You're a subject matter expert. You understand the benefits, and you enjoy persuading people to use Salesforce to its maximum capacity. So not only helping them, but realize the benefits. And that's a huge selling point for an IT team.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. We have Dynamics here, which I know it's like the equivalent of saying Voldemort in Hogwarts here. We're all Salesforce people, but Dynamics is awful. And our team hate tracking in Dynamics. Sorry, I should say Dynamics isn't awful. Our versions. So we could do with an implementation of Salesforce. But typically the people who are going to interview a certified administrator are going to be whoever owns Salesforce, and often whoever has some overview of the users and their problems. And probably the biggest bugbear for the person who owns Salesforce is the users complaining about Salesforce. Salesforce isn't working. We need to fix these bugs. We need these problems. So to find somebody who puts their hand up and says on a resume, I love dealing with problems. I love talking to users. I love talking to people about the benefits of Salesforce and acting as the subject matter expert in the team. I've got a great track record of helping small businesses optimize based on their software, based on their websites and their systems. And I love getting hands-on and rolling my sleeves up and dealing with the problems myself. Give me music to everybody's ears.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So really push that customer one-on-one, solve your problems, and follow up afterward.
I think that's a big thing. It's like, that's what you want, right, isn't it? I think you'd expect every administrator to be able to solve the problems. And if they can't, they typically get pushed over to the development team. I think it's pushing the customer service piece. So the question, you've helped all these businesses save money, which is incredible. I'm sure you, because of the nature of the work, have good relationships with those business owners or those people you helped. I imagine you probably have a lot of them on your phone right now. You could text any of those businesses or those contacts. How many of them have you got to give you a LinkedIn recommendation?
None.
This is madness.
Point taken.
You've helped all these businesses probably stay afloat during the pandemic, survive and make it through, and you're probably good friend. I bet if they text you asking for a beer or a round of golf or something like that, you'd say yes. Goes the other way. That's the big thing I would put on here is, and almost in a competitive job market, you gotta be your own cheerleader. You really do. Agencies will help you. You know, they're here to help you get jobs, but ultimately you gotta be your own cheerleader. I mean, if you put a personal profile, and I like genuinely do this for candidates, if you have LinkedIn recommendations that say how great you are at customer service and problem solving and how friendly and polite you are at dealing with problems and backlog and how proactive you are about dealing with the issues yourself rather than trying to pass them on and escalate, and you just put a couple of those recommendations here, screenshot 2-3 of them, first thing the manager sees, it's like a no-brainer, isn't it? Why would you not interview that person? Just out of curiosity, who uses TripAdvisor and Yelp before they go? Yeah, Alison, I'm the same. Yeah, Abigail. Everybody looks at the feed pictures on Yelp or sees what the reviews are like before they commit to booking a brunch spot. It's the same thing. You get 3 resumes and you got one of them with these recommendations about how great this person is at dealing with the system, and you got 2 other resumes without. You're going to interview this person first, aren't you? Now, nobody ever goes through all the out recommendations and does a background check on who these people are. And I've always wondered myself, who comes away from brunch and sits there for an hour on their computer writing that review? It's a trust system, isn't it? You honour it. But public, if somebody will publicly endorse you, Brian, I'm sure they would be willing to do so. I mean, it's a head start on everybody else in that interview process.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
But otherwise, I think it's really good. Any other questions, comments, or anyone else want to add anything?
I did have a question about the top one there. So I do have talent stacker down, and that's because that's the most relevant Salesforce admin position that I've got. And all of the stuff at the top there was the volunteer project that we did where we were in an org building something. But since then, it's participating in events and stuff like that. So it's a relatively small part of my job experience. And other feedback I've gotten before is you have like almost no experience. So, that's why that one at the top there has as many bullet points as it does. I'm kind of like having it, drawing it out a little bit there.
Yeah, and it's so I think anyone from I mean, what you're effectively doing is it's not like you're straight out of college with no experience. So you're literally entering the job market. You're having a career change, right? And there's got to be at some point. That's fine. That's normal. People do it all the time. I'd actually say Salesforce is probably the most welcoming to people of career change in any of the industry I've seen. Mm-hmm. And I think a good way to do it here, I mean, what you're effectively saying is, I've got all this experience from my web development background. Here's how I've really helped impact businesses and support them. And then I'm investing, it's not just a career change, but I'm investing in this career change by going through Talent Stacker and acquiring these skills. So it's not like a fluke or a side thought. I've put time and effort into this as a constant change. But putting your personal profile about what you bring to the table and putting recommendations, that's not Salesforce specific. That's just great. That's just you as an individual and people willing to vouch. So I think it's fine to do so, what you've done. If you're new at starting out, it's about showing them what you can do and what you can bring to the table. And if you can get recommendations from your last work, you got projects to anything you can do that says, this is what I would bring, and I'm aware of it, and these are how I'd apply these skills. And then if you have that experience, just quantifying it, making it really measurable for a manager to go apples to apples, makes a big difference.
Much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Didn't mean to keep you over. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Nice. My manager saying, "Where are you?" I'm just going to give you my LinkedIn. So, but yeah, I mean, talent stack is exactly the way to do it. If you want to make and the payoff, don't wait for the black hole that can be company websites and putting everything in the hope that you'll get drawn out. Connect to people, join the user groups. A lot of people are talking about projects saying, "Hey, I've got like 6 weeks of work. I need help with the data. Is anyone available?" There's a load of other ways through the community you can get jobs. But connecting with managers that say they're hiring, saying to them, "Hey, look, just want to introduce myself. This is what I'm trying to do. If you know anybody, I'd appreciate the support." Everybody's really friendly. Everyone's really helpful.